Yeah, so this is my response to hbomberguy's 2017 Christmas special. Now you may wonder, why am I doing a response video at all to a video that was published over 6 years ago? Well, because I saw it only a month ago, and then someone spoke about it again recently, and I'm annoyed. I think it's a very bad video. I think it's a bad faith critique. And there are a lot of criticisms that I'm just kind of baffled at how he even managed to reason himself to those conclusions. And you know, he's seen as a smart guy. The video has over 1 million views. What do I have? Maybe 40, 30, maybe 20 subscribers, something. So, you know, this isn't exactly a threat to create drama in the community. So I thought, you know, why not? Let's address his criticisms.
No, the last decade of holidays have been a nightmare for me because I've had to prepare for yet another knife in the back of Doctor Who.
So he starts out by mentioning that he's not a fan of Doctor Who Christmas specials. I tend not to be either. I mean, I think Moffat crafted some great ones, but the majority just kind of broad and light and easy and made for an audience who maybe doesn't watch any Doctor Who besides Christmas. For example, Russell T Davies' Christmas specials tend to be blockbuster-like episodes. So very much made for not Doctor Who fans, but just general TV watching people. Moffat got a bit more niche, but of course he was allowed to when the show had firmly established itself. Yeah, you can even see in some of Moffat's Christmas specials they also tend to be light, but at least he went a bit more experimental. Anyway, it's fine to not prefer Christmas specials, but the issue is more so how hbomberguy decides to critique it, which comes next.
I mean, who can forget the Christmas Invasion, in which the Doctor farts around in bed for 40 minutes and then at the end he wakes up and has a sword fight in his pyjamas with Blood Skull Man. That's his name, don't go and check. Partway through the fight he loses a hand, but not really, it comes back, and he wins. Yay! Woo! Oh, by the way, that hand turns out to be an incredibly important plot device 22 episodes later, so I hope you were paying attention on Christmas Day. Oh, and 16 episodes after that, the Doctor doesn't want to change his appearance while regenerating, so he pours his excess energy into the hand, and it forms a new version of the Doctor, who goes off to live with Rose in an alternate universe.
So he uses the Christmas Invasion, which is the first Christmas special the show ever did, or the new show at least. But he doesn't really say why it's bad. He just mocks the plot, like he recaps, but does it in a silly mocking voice as if it's self-evidential that it's bad. Again, I don't think this episode is that good either. It's probably one of the least interesting Christmas special. But you know, what's wrong with the hand thing? Yeah, Davies sets up something intense first episode that then gets paid off in one of his last big stories. That's just plotting. That's just setting things up to use later on. What is this critique? But you note that this is a how should we say this? It's a pattern that hbomberguy would do for a video. He will recap something, but without actually explaining why it's bad, which, you know, doesn't actually constitute as criticism.
Already know that Moffat's relationship with Doctor Who is lifelong. He was a fan of the original series, and he wrote the Children in Need charity spoof of Doctor Who, which was actually the first appearance of the Doctor on television for quite some time. It ended, perhaps fittingly, with the Doctor regenerating into a woman. Now, when I saw this years ago, I thought, wow, wouldn't that be nice? But I realise in retrospect, after reading some recent comments by Moffat, that this to him was meant as a joke.
And of course, my sonic screwdriver. Look, it's got 3 settings. Doctor, stop that!
Like, haha, the Doctor keeps dying in silly little ways and regenerating. What's the next comical thing he can regenerate into? Oh, a woman! Haha, imagine! A woman Doctor, that's a laugh, right?
Yeah, this is very cringe, but we'll get back to it. I mean, let's put this into perspective. This was in the 90s. Moffat has also admitted that he was a selfish, narcissistic prick, among other things. Not specifically in response to this or anything, but I think he said it generally in a review that he, or an interview that he had in the 90s. And then recently, I think in the 2010s, he said that, he was narcissistic, believed himself to be better than anyone else. I think it was in response to him critiquing most of the classic series as being poor. So, I mean, again, not a specific response to this skit, but, just a general, he's admitted was a pretty, not a great guy in the past. But, in 30 years, people can grow somewhat.
Moffat's approach rears its head in the special itself, with the first Doctor's, shall we say, ironic sexist comments?
Older gentlemen, like women, can be put to use.
You can't say things like that.
I don't really know what his critique is here, but I wasn't personally a huge fan of how they didn't really give the first Doctor as much interesting characterization as they could have, and instead a lot of his dialogue is just sexist jokes. I mean, sexist jokes that are ridiculed, no problem with the jokes themselves. It just feels like flanderization of the Doctor's character. But again, I think it's good to acknowledge that the show was made in the 60s, and since then, back in the 60s, we couldn't have had a female Doctor, for example, so the show has changed. So I think it's fine to have jokes about sexism, to underscore that progress that Doctor Who has made as a television series by acknowledging its failures, partly a product of the time period, but that it pushed forward and that it's changed. And of course, this applies to Moffat as a producer and writer, and his efforts to get better at writing female and minority characters into the show. Again, I thought there were a bit too many jokes, and it kind of suffered the first Doctor's character. Not a lot, but, a bit. The jokes themselves are fine, but again, hbomberguy doesn't actually explain why this is bad. He just presents it in a mocking voice, and then that's it.
But writing like that loses its appeal when it's written by the man who had several great opportunities to actually cast a woman as this character, and didn't because he was worried about upsetting the kind of people who actually think like that.
Okay, this is a bad faith argument. He suggests that Moffat only considered casting a woman as the Doctor as a joke, never seriously, because of the skit that he did in the 90s and his comment about the show not being exclusively for progressive liberals, which, again, I'll admit, it's very cringe. I mean, he has described himself as wetly liberal himself. He's gonna have cringe political takes. But if you just take that as his entire stance on the issue, you're simplifying his actual thoughts on this and ignoring the text. Like, look at what's in the show. Moffat has openly supported the idea of a female Doctor for a long time, but his writing has paved the way for cross-gender regenerations in Doctor Who. I mean, he didn't just talk about it. I mean, 12th Era was the first in televised Doctor Who to establish Time Lords as canon gender fluid, and Moffat also introduced the first female master, Missy, who was also one of the very best characters in the entire franchise. And even in Hellbent, for example, when the Doctor shoots a Time Lord, the Time Lord transforms into a woman. So it's not just, the villain Time Lord is the one who could become a woman, but, he's done a lot to build up. So when the Doctor becomes a woman, it doesn't feel like out of nowhere. I think Moffat is actually, in the interview, he mentioned that he thought about a female 12th Doctor, but went with Peter Capaldi because it was the best fit, regardless of gender. I mean, I can't prove this or anything, but I think it would have been too early, culturally, to have a female Doctor right after Smith. But again, that's debatable, but the point is, Moffat has paved the way, done a lot of work to make that transition as smooth as possible. So I think it's using a skit from the 90s to caricature Moffat's entire character as a sexist prick who hates women is ridiculous and completely ignorant of the actual text.
And Season 8 was almost alright, but even the episodes of the show written by other writers are affected by Moffat's poor plans as showrunner for the overall direction of the wider story. While most of the good episodes, like Mummy on the Orient Express or Flatline, get to be their own thing, there's still a lot of mucking about with this overarching story about deciding whether or not the Doctor's secretly a bad guy who kills people and it's bad, and Missy, a mysterious figure who keeps meeting up with people who died during each episode. So a fairly decent chunk of each writer's episode gets stolen to serve Moffat's inevitable nonsense season finale.
It's just also like, what are you talking about? He criticizes Series 8 because he says whatever some good episodes, it spent too much time on the overarching story arcs of Missy and Am I a Good Man to give those episodes room to breathe. Maybe this could be a criticism I could understand for Series 6, which is generally known for being a bit poorly planned and overstuffed. But Series 8... that's not a problem at all, especially the Missy story arc. I mean, to set her up, we got like a minute at the end of every episode or something to hint at the whole afterlife thing. That's it. Takes up no time at all. Very smoothly done. So I have no idea how that takes up any script time or like screen time. It's like a minute, 30 seconds. Then there's the I Am a Good Man arc, where he claims it takes up too much time, which, well, I mean, I guess that's understandable, but, I mean, that's the main arc. Listen, I mean, if you don't like, I think personally that it was a good arc, and you should question a character's morality, especially when a character is the Doctor, who, I mean, the show has been questioning his morality for a long time. So I think it's perfectly fine to make a longer arc of that. But even if you didn't like it, that's fine. But spreading a character arc over like a series long, that's just how you write character arcs. I mean that's just, I think that's how every modern TV show does it. So, you know, I mean, you can claim, oh, you didn't like this arc, you didn't like the big character moments. Well, I'm sorry you didn't like the character arc, but it's not a criticism to that it takes up time, because it's his arc, his character develops. So I think that's a ridiculous criticism.
But it also means the individual writers can't really do anything with the Doctor or his companion for that season, Clara, because that would risk messing up whatever big character moments Moffat had planned for the end of the season. The characters couldn't really develop their relationships with each other or change as people. At best, sometimes Clara realizes the Doctor's not always the best guy, and then changes her mind in the next episode and goes to hang out with him again.
This is another very weird conclusion that he got to. The 12th Doctor does change, as does Clara. I mean, the 12th Doctor softens and becomes kinder and more understanding, and he learns to take emotional responsibility for Clara, while Clara becomes increasingly more reckless and dangerous, and similar to the Doctor, she becomes addicted to the thrill and starts developing the same flaws that he has. So, I mean, how... Again, this is one of those, it's a very weird thing. You can claim you don't like the arc, but why would you make a critique that their arcs took up too much time, but now you say, oh, they didn't change at all? Again, you can just, it's fine, you don't have to like the character arcs, but I think it's disingenuous to claim, oh, they didn't change at all. Because, I mean, obviously they did. I mean, the entire arc is about how toxic they are, and the addiction and the codependency, and how that is resolved by the Doctor not being a prick anymore and taking emotional accountability and respecting Clara as a person, compared to what he wants and how he imagines her needs and desires to. I mean, clearly there's an arc there.
The third Capaldi series was basically a soft reboot. The first episode was even called The Pilot. The Doctor gets reintroduced in a new context as a prestigious professor. Hey, Steve, wouldn't it have been great if you'd written a bunch of episodes that show him reaching this point in his life? I mean, literally, like, a whole season of television could have been written about how the Doctor ends up where he is and the place he's at the start of this season, and they just don't.
This is another very weird criticism. The Series 10 opener opens with the Doctor now being a professor at this university, which is how he is introduced to his new companion, Bill. And then, but why not tell the entire story of how the Doctor arrived at that point? Why? Why would you want an entire season about the Doctor becoming a college professor. I mean, that sounds really boring. I mean, you mean without monsters, without time travel, just how he became like a professor at a university? What does that have to? I mean, sometimes this is just he sets things up. I mean, you don't have to dig into everything. Yeah, I have no idea. These are dots the audience can connect themselves. We don't have to spend an entire season on something completely unnecessary. You know, Moffat actually has a deeper story that he wants to, write. So let's dig into that instead of how he became a college professor.
Bill was in this season, and I think she starts out as a really interesting companion, but then the series kind of is sort of generic the whole way through, so she doesn't really get to be as interesting as I think she could have been.
I guess this is a fine opinion. I like Bill, but she does only have one season and a much less complicated relationship than Clara did. So, yeah, I suppose that's a fair critique. Anyway, so, yeah.
I will now attempt to recount in full the plot of the 2017 Doctor Who Christmas special.
Yeah, I'm gonna skip most of this because it's just him spending like 3-4 minutes badly recapping the plot. Again, this is something he does a lot, not criticisms. He just assumes that him explaining it funny like it's bad means it's bad. So, that doesn't constitute as a critique, so I will skip it.
The Doctor assumes this glass lady thing is based on a real person and just needs a really big database to look them up for some reason.
If I may. Who were you?
She wasn't anyone. She's a computer-generated interface connected to a multiform interfacing data.
Oh, for heaven's sake, will you put that ridiculous buzzing toy away and look at the woman? You see, her face, it's very slightly asymmetrical. If it were computer-generated, it wouldn't produce that effect.
Yes. You're absolutely right. I should have noticed that.
Well, it might help if you could see properly.
You'll note that whenever hbomberguy says for some reason, it's actually in the text. I guess he just didn't pay attention, and then he pretends that it's not there, and it's a flaw.
Oh hey, they actually worked Christmas into it, and semi-justified having this random guy be the guy who gets abducted.
Random guy? What do you mean
Oh, also he's an ancestor of Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, for some reason.
Captain Archibald Hamish Lethbridge Stewart.
For some reason, it's a fun little reference to a beloved character.
And then he finally goes out the way we all wish we would, by exploding violently into light and fire while transforming into Jodie Whittaker.
This is such a thing that Moffat haters do. They criticize Moffat for doing something, but then completely ignore Smith Davis does the exact same thing. Didn't 10, kind of blow up his entire TARDIS way more when he regenerated? Like, that was on literal fire and breaking apart, like structures were collapsing. And again, there's nothing bad about this. He just, mocks it, and that's the critique. Doesn't explain anything.
I have a few small questions.
Alright, let's go, dude.
Why didn't the entity just explain itself and make it clear it didn't have any ulterior motives the way it happily did once the Doctor asked a Dalek to Google it for him? Why did it threaten him at all, considering that it has the memories of everyone who ever died, so it knows all about him, and knows that he's a peaceful guy who doesn't need to be threatened?
The testimony does not know that the Doctor is a peaceful guy. Oh my god. This is in the episode. Let's break this down. I don't know if people who haven't watched the episode are watching this, but I'll explain it anyway. Twice Upon a Time is about the 10th Doctor, the first Doctor, and some guy getting, thrown together in a time-space adventure by this weird, glassy alien technology called Testimony. Now, Testimony has plucked the soldier from the time screen to record his memories directly before the moment of his death. This is something that Testimony does with all the dead throughout history. But an accident prevented him from being returned to the moment of his death, so now Testimony hopes to fix that error, in other words, necessitating his death. And to make matters even worse, Testimony has also resurrected Bill. Bill is his companion who died in the finale. But it's fine. Lesbians. She made it. But anyway, he says that he's gonna escape with Bill and the soldier, and that if Testimony doesn't like what he's doing, then he'll, or if he doesn't like what Testimony is doing, then he'll come back. He'll put a stop to it. And then the first Doctor asks, who the hell is this man? And to make these statements, and then Testimony shows, in the form of like a PowerPoint presentation, he's the Doctor of War. He's responsible for so many deaths throughout the universe. This is precisely the reason why Testimony treats the Doctor as a bad person, or like someone they can't trust. Testimony's specific purpose is to record the moment of someone's death, right before they die, those moments. What do you think this person has seen? Like, if the Doctor pops, they only have those memories to go off. So, in those memories, where does the Doctor pops up? He pops up when people die, usually killed by him. Do you remember the big Time War, for example, where he killed millions? He didn't slaughter the whole race because of the Day of the Doctor, but that's why Testimony's view on the Doctor would only be at his worst, at his most violent, as he kills people. That's what they have of him, because what they mostly have of him is records of the last moments of people who died by him. And even then, it's not that menacing against the Doctor. It actually wishes to understand the Doctor better, which is why it makes up Bill to follow him and understand him better. That's it. And if you're asking why didn't the Doctor explain himself better, well, the Doctor jumps to conclusions. Because the whole point of the episode is that he's seen so much evil and suffering and hatred in the universe that he's just tired. He wonders, why can't he just die? Why does he have to regenerate and keep going? That's kind of the point of the episode. The episode is about restoring his faith in the universe and its inhabitants. So he jumps to conclusions. He doesn't have an interest in explaining himself. Again, this is all in the episode. I don't know how this is so difficult for hbomberguy to figure out. Actually, I know precisely why it's difficult for him to figure out, because this is the case with almost all Moffat haters. They make him out to be this caricaturish, sexist prick who hates women and sabotages his own show to fuck with fans, instead of engaging with the actual text.
Why did the Doctor decide the only solution was to go find that one Dalek from 2 seasons ago and didn't get mentioned again?
It's just fun. It's a fun reference to a character that we saw before. A big thing in the revived series of Doctor has been the whole, you would make a good Dalek, which, personally, I have my own opinions if it really works that much. I thought even with Ninth, it was a bit, he's not that Dalek-y. But, since the 12th Doctor's whole arc is about, am I a good man, then it makes sense to bring back Rusty for this, because the themes are similar. So, that's all.
How does he know where it ended up?
It just doesn't matter. He just does. It's been time. It's been seasons in between. He's a time traveler. It's just, he just found out. He discovered it on his own. Some time in between episodes. We don't have to explain every tiny little thing.
Why, if the Dalek hates Daleks and wants to kill Daleks and can clearly see down to the ground level and make fairly accurate shots, has it not killed all the de-shelled and still alive Daleks squirming around on the surface where it can definitely see them?
Daleks are very difficult to kill, even by other Daleks. You should know this.
Why does it give up when it sees that he's already dying? And even if, for some reason, it's decided that the best thing to do is leave the dying to die without killing them, why does it actually believe he's dying, even though it definitely knows Time Lords regenerate?
At this point, the Doctor has decided to die. He's not planning on regenerating. This is the case actually for both the first Doctor and the 12th Doctor. How does the Dalek know this? Because he has his little scanner thing. I mean, this isn't hard science. He does. He scans and he can tell that, oh, he's actually planning to dying, so they're back regenerating.
Next question. Why did the Daleks have a comprehensive mega hive mind super database bigger than the Time Lords have, who, by the way, are the lords of all of time?
The Daleks nearly wiped out all the Time Lords in the Great Time War, so, their civilization isn't exactly the most pristine. Also, they're not the most hard for the Doctor right now, since the Doctor, killed some of them, threatened the stupid Rift Universe, revived Clara, stole the TARDIS. Why does the Dalek have this sort of database system? They just do.
And who plugged all these bloody wires in? It doesn't even have arms. It's just a plunger and a whisk. How
does the Daleks do anything without arms or hands? How can it build a scar? How could it? I mean, it's fucking Doctor Who.
Why a World War I soldier?
Because it fits thematically. Because the character is connected to another character that is very beloved in the fandom. Because he wants to use the event that happened during the war for the purpose of the episode. It works thematically.
Why didn't the Bill Potts entity just explain itself right away and clear everything up instead of insisting she was real?
We've already cleared up. Why doesn't the Doctor and Tessa Winnie just talk it out and explain everything? But Bill is real. She makes this point in the episode.
Not everything's evil, Doctor. You're not the only kind one in the universe.
I knew you weren't real.
Oh, shut up and stop being so stupid. Of course I'm real. What is anyone supposed to be except a bunch of memories? These are my memories, so this is me. I'm Bill Potts, and I'm back.
Because she has the memories of Bill, it doesn't matter that she's artificial, she is Bill. Moffat has this idea throughout Doctor Who, where he says that, we're just stories in the end. So this all fits thematically, once again.
Why undo the Doctor for getting Clara in the last 5 minutes of the last run of the last episode of this incarnation even being around?
I guess so other Doctors could, remember Clara again, or if they wanted to bump into her again, or, this is Doctor Who. Permanent consequences like that are not always gonna stick. I think this is fine to take an issue with, though. I'm personally not quite sure how I feel about it. I'm not overjoyed by it, but, I don't think... I understand, it was probably gonna happen.
Why bring back this Dalek for a 2-minute conversation that doesn't actually progress its story or relationship with the Doctor at all and imparts 5 seconds of exposition, and yet spend half the episode farting around on the planet getting to it?
Okay, I'll say that the incorporation of Rusty the Dalek is a bit... it's a bit sloppy, but the episode wasn't planned to ever be made. The point was, the original plan was for the Doctor Falls to be the series finale, but then Schubert said that they needed more time, and Moffat, for his series, and then Moffat had a choice. Either he had to give up the Christmas slot, so there wouldn't be a Doctor Who Christmas episode this year, or he had to suddenly scramble to make one in a hurry, and he decided the latter. So, yeah, it's gonna be a bit sloppy in some cases.
Why were there no stakes whatsoever? And most importantly, what exactly was Stephen Moffat actually trying to do?
Okay, so here are the stakes, right? Both Doctors, both the first Doctor and the second Doctor, has decided to die. They don't want to regenerate, they simply want to basically commit suicide. That's what they want to do. And then the point of the first Doctor being there and these stakes, because there are stakes, just not stakes as in a monster, but there are internal character stakes, is to show him what he's about to become. The record of all those people who die because of him, and how in the future he will become the War Doctor. The first Doctor is terrified of what he might become. That gives him, even more reason, why should I regenerate to become this person? But at the end, he comes to a conclusion, thanks to testimony in the 12th Doctor, that the meaning of the Doctor War is to make sure that there are a few less bodies on the battlefield. And that's when the Christmas armistice comes in, where, both sides both armies decide to rebel and refuse to kill each other. This explains why there is a random World War One soldier, because it plays informatically. So that's the first Doctor, right? He doesn't want to die, he's scared to become the War Doctor, but he realizes that the War Doctor still tries to make sure that as few people as possible die. And then there's the 12th Doctor, who he's kind of tired. We saw this in Heaven Sent as well. He started asking himself, why do I always have to do this? Why do I always have to save people? Why can't I just stop? Why can't I just lose? Why does he always have to get up? He loses so much, and he does all this, as he expressed in the Doctor Falls, without hope, without witness, without reward. And still he does it because that's who he is. If he can help, then he will. But it takes so much, and he gets so little reward from it. Then, again, the script is a bit sloppy on why precisely he decided to, continue. But I assume that Clara gave him, the emotional strength to continue. But, again, it's a bit sloppy.
Remember the End of Time, the last special with Russell T Davies in charge, and the last one with David Tennant as the Doctor, where he saves the day and makes a heroic sacrifice and then starts to regenerate? Remember how the regeneration started and there was still 20 minutes of the Doctor going around saying bye to everyone, even old companions who we hadn't seen for quite a while, like Rose and Martha, and we even find out what they've been up to in the interim, like that Martha and Mickey got married?
So, of course, instead of trying to grapple with what the text actually tries to explore with the two Doctors and their specific arcs and worries, he just says, he was trying to copy Russell T Davies but badly because Moffat's bad.
It's clear that Moffat sort of wanted to do that for himself. Remember that with this episode's invention of testimony, Moffat could have written in a meeting with almost any character he wanted, ever, because testimony's literally a database of every human who has ever died. Moffat could bring anyone back to say bye to them, but then he discovered that he hadn't created any characters worth going back to and finding and reminding us about. This is a serious question. Who else from Moffat's episodes for the last 5 years does anyone actually remember?
So, of course, hbomberguy just pretends that, Moffat tried to do what Russell T Davies did, but he just can't write good characters, so he couldn't show any. I mean, obviously, we could just rattle off a list of... this is hbomberguy trying to paint the Doctor as, the sexist prick that he thinks he is. I could name a number of good female characters that Moffat has written. Bill, Clara, River, me, Missy, Vastra, Jenny. Several of those, I'd argue pretty much all, are queer in some way or another. So, again, why didn't he make this big farewell tour? Because Moffat didn't want to. Because he wanted to do his own thing. Because he didn't just want to copy Russell T Davies.
Oh yeah, I really missed the sinister puddle, or all 8 flavours of the new Dalek Gumdrop Brigade. Just kidding, everyone quietly tried to forget that redesign, and even Moffat said they were a mistake.
So yeah, instead of, mentioning any of the characters that I just rambled up, he just said, the colorful Daleks in that one episode in his first season. Again, this is bad faith. It's not a real critique that I can actually engage with, because it's insincere, and he's obviously incredibly biased and doesn't care enough to engage with the actual text. Again, a consistent trait of his.
Can't even say bye to Emily Pond.
Emily Pond. Emily.
So it's like Moffat's coming full circle by having the Doctor go, in the last episode he's going to write, to a place mentioned in the first episode he wrote. This is clever, but in a very particular kind of way. All it does is make the few people who'll even get the reference feel clever, and I remember a time when Doctor Who had loftier goals than that.
Oh my god, loftier goals. It's a fun little reference to a planet in his first episode. That's all. It doesn't... And he tries to paint us as, look at... Doctor Who actually used to have loftier goals, but this is what the episode is all about. He hasn't mentioned anything about 12s or the first Doctor's arc, because he ignores it. Again, I've talked about it, but it's not something he at all brings up in this video. Instead, he talks about color for Daleks and about a reference to the first planet, which is such horrendous that the episode is all about that. Obviously, oh, I can't with this.
So weird that the last thing Stephen Moffat is ever going to write for Doctor Who features two of the best and worst things of his writing that I singled out in a video I made that got really popular, shoehorned into each other. Like, is he calling me out? Is he seen the video? Are you watching this now, Stephen?
Probably not, no.
Or did he really think everyone was dying to see what happened to Rusty the Dalek? I hope you all recognise the importance of the Dalek being called Rusty, by the way. It's a name from the Moffat school of clever references. It's a reference to the previous showrunner, Russ T. Davies. Rusty... The Doctor spent that episode inside the Dalek, trying to save it from within. It's a clumsy metaphor for how Moffat saw his own input on the early series. He was running around loose inside Rusty's machine, making little adjustments and making it better than it was, impacting it in some grand way. Bringing Rusty back here is Moffat's way of tipping his hat to the previous showrunner.
This is an insane reach, and it's even more insane to try to paint this as Moffat thinking he's better than Russell T Davies and having to like fix what Russell T Davies fucked up. I mean, this is complete. He's making this up. There's nothing to base this on. He's just making it up because he hates Moffat. So obviously Moffat is a terrible human being and hates Russell T Davies too, and thinks he's so much better than anyone else.
It's not an evil plan.
Imagine sitting in front of your computer with the script for your final Doctor Who episode and looking at a screen where you have physically typed the words, "Oh, it's not an evil plan. This was all pointless." That's the place where I would do a rewrite or hope that, like, someone would stop me. Why didn't anybody stop?
Yes, because there was no monster in the episode. The entire episode is pointless. Oh my god, it's so illiterate. I can't. I mean, this is also something interesting. We can get back to this later, maybe, but this is something interesting that Moffat has done. In a lot of his monsters, we have his own monster that he created, right? I mean, like the first, the Weeping Angels, right? Monsters don't exist when you observe them. And then you have the Vashta, which are basically just shadows. Shadows that eat people, but, shadows. And then you have the science monsters that you only remember when you look at them. And when you look away, suddenly they don't exist. So it's actually the opposite from the Weeping Angels there. So, and the silence basically exists between cuts of an episode, television show, for example. And then what do you have after that? I mean, Listen, for example, the Series 8 episode. There the question was, maybe is there a monster or is there not a monster at all? And here we specifically have, in this final episode, the ultimate Moffat monster, no monster at all. There is no evil plan. A lot of Moffat's, especially the Capaldi era, has been about how maybe there aren't really monsters at all. Very few people or very few things are actually evil. They're just hungry, he says. And we see this, that Moffat doesn't use the Daleks often, for example. Russell T Davies had a much better knack at writing really evil things. But Moffat was a lot more about broken systems, broken institutions, the erasure of such things, which is why he worked better with Cybermen, for example. So this is all perfectly in line. The episode isn't about the monster, it's about the Doctor and the two Doctors. So, again, trying to paint this as bad without engaging with what the episode has to say about the characters at all is just incredibly anti-intellectual. And I can't believe he thinks that ridiculing that there's no evil plan is a gotcha, instead of trying to think about why Moffat would write that line.
Has the Doctor changed as a person in the almost 3 full seasons since these characters met?
Oh my god, this is what I mean. He's ignoring anything that episode wants to say. Has the 12th Doctor had any sort of character development? Yes. Obviously he's had character development. Clara had her entire arc. which resulted in Hellbent, and how the Doctor had to grow from that. Bill had an arc. Missy had a huge arc about, you know, going from evil to literally standing with the Doctor. I mean, oh my god. You'll note, for example, that he never really talks about the actual Series 10. What he talks about is Twice Upon a Time, which is generally considered to be a sloppy episode because it wasn't meant to exist. I think it's ridiculous that he tries to pretend that not a single character had any sort of arc or character development. Criticize character writing all you want, but you don't have to go so extreme in the one direction. You're gonna pretend that it doesn't exist at all. I don't know. I mean, listen, for the special itself, I think it's fine. But if I wrote it in a hurry, it shows at times. But hey, give us a little extra time with 12 and Bill. That's fine. I don't think it really harms Capaldi's actual finale. But I think something this really shows and disingenuous is just that he makes a video and he picks Twice Upon Time and talks about Rusty the Dalek, which is like your Into the Dalek episode. Both of these are... this is like a weak, extremely rushed script, and he makes out that the entire era was shitty. Like, why would you pick only the weakest aspects of, like, Moffat's era of the show? Into the Dalek and Twice Upon a Time? I think it speaks volumes that he couldn't mention anything about Series 9, because it ruined his entire narrative about this. He omits so much. He didn't mention Missy at all. She's so important to the overall story of the Capaldi era. I think it's... But yeah, anyway, I guess that's it.